Windoda Mkhwanazi waqubuka esikhaleni kuhle kotshwala buqubuka esiswini somuntu waqubuka kwanyakaza iSouth Africa yonke kwavuka izinseka singomama sakufaka eziswini zethu sathi Nkosi Jesu ima naye. Windoda Mkhwanazi bengikubuka ikhomishana kaMadlangi kufaka imibuzo maqeda ichazeke ngendlela obuphendula ngayo. Uyebo unguyebo, uqhabo unguqha. Windoda Mkhwanazi waqhamuka maqede kwabuya ithemba kubantu baseNingizimu Afrika. Wezwa amadoda ezwini lomzansi ethi idinga ukwesekwa lensizwa, idinga ukuvikelwa. Windoda Mkhwanazi waqhamuka ithemba selithanda ukuphela ngomthetho ezweni lakithi. Lapho sibona oBushiri becanasa oMothoso bephuma becanasa kodwa abantwana bethu bamantombazane basala belimele. Angikhulumike ekaBesta. Windoda Mkhwanazi ngikubuka unguMoses waseSouth Africa ongasikhipha kuleli gibhide lasemzansi. Isililo sethu sesidlula abantwana baka-Israel beseGibhite sibe sisezweni lakithi. Windoda Mkhwanazi angigeqa magula ngoba angimuki. Sengivala lenkulumo yami bengingathanda umzansi wonke ungivumele uma ngithi asiphakamiseni lensizwa iliphathe izwe lase-South Africa ngoba osopolitiki.
You must have watched the video of the speaker speaking, that elderly woman with a shaky but determined voice, reciting a poem she wrote for General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. Now, if you don't know who General Mkhwanazi is, let me quickly remind you. He's the Provincial Commissioner of the South African Police Service in KwaZulu-Natal, and over the years he has built a reputation as a no-nonsense, straight-talking figure who does not shy away from tough decisions. In a country where law enforcement is often under fire for corruption, inefficiency, and a worrying lack of public trust, Mkhwanazi has come to be seen by some as a rare example of discipline and principle. So, when an elderly woman, clearly someone who has seen much in her lifetime, takes the time to write and recite a heartfelt poem in his honor, it hits differently. It is not the usual political praise singing we hear at rallies, where applause is forced and the speeches are full of slogans. This was deeply personal, almost like a grandmother speaking to her community and reminding everyone that leadership rooted in honesty and bravery still matters. The poem itself was not polished for television. It had pauses, it had tremors in the voice, and it had that raw quality you get when words come from the heart rather than the page. She spoke about sacrifice, about protecting the weak, and about carrying a burden that most of us would not be able to carry. You could hear in her tone that she was not just praising a police general, but trying to preserve a memory of dignity in an age when so many public figures are disgraced. Now let's be honest, South Africans don't usually write love poems for police commissioners. Usually, the only poems that come to mind about the police are the satirical ones you hear at taverns, poking fun at how long they take to arrive at a crime scene, or how they somehow manage to find energy when it comes to roadblocks but never when it comes to chasing down criminals. Yet here was a woman, turning the stereotype upside down, dedicating a work of art to someone in uniform. It speaks volumes about the way Mkhwanazi has positioned himself. This is a man who, during the 2021 unrest in KwaZulu-Natal, stood firm in trying to restore order while the entire province seemed to be collapsing into chaos. He has not been without controversy, but even his critics often admit that his discipline and professional conduct stand out in a sea of mediocrity. That's why gestures like this poem resonate. They show that ordinary South Africans are hungry for examples of integrity, whether in politics, policing, or community leadership. At the same time, there's a deeper layer here that we mustn't ignore. When an elderly citizen feels the need to publicly celebrate someone for simply doing their job properly, it's also a subtle indictment of how low our standards have sunk. Think about it. We live in a country where the bar has been dragged so low by corruption scandals and failed promises that a decent act of leadership feels extraordinary. And so a grandmother puts pen to paper and decides that this, at least, must be honored. But let's not get too sentimental without a pinch of humor. I could not help but imagine the general himself listening to the poem, probably sitting stiff in his uniform, unsure whether to salute, smile, or just hide his face out of embarrassment. South African men of his generation are not exactly known for handling public displays of affection with grace. You could see him probably shifting in his chair thinking, "Yo, go, please, not in front of the cameras." But at the same time, you know he must have felt proud, because respect from the elderly carries a weight that no medal or title can match. This whole moment also reveals something about our culture. Storytelling and poetry are part of how communities preserve memory and transmit values. Before Twitter threads and Facebook rants, it was the oral poem, the hymn, and the public recitation that carried both protest and praise. The woman's poem sits in that tradition. It is not just about Mkhwanazi as a man, but about what he represents: resilience, duty, and the possibility of having leaders who put service above personal enrichment. Of course, cynics will ask if this is not just another case of personality cult building, or whether such public praise can make us blind to the flaws of those we admire. And that's a fair question. No leader, including Mkhwanazi, is without blemish. But there's something refreshing about praise that comes from below, rather than above. This was not a staged ANC event with party colors waving. It was not a media stunt. It was one woman, speaking from her heart, giving thanks in the language she knew best, poetry. And maybe that's exactly what South Africa needs more of right now. Not endless political speeches filled with jargon and excuses, but genuine human moments that remind us why leadership still matters. Because when you strip away the headlines and scandals, the truth is simple: people still long for honesty, fairness, and protection in their communities. Now, what does this mean going forward? Well, if anything, it places more pressure on figures like Mkhwanazi. Once the public begins to see you as a symbol of integrity, the burden of expectation grows heavier. One wrong step, one poor decision, and the same voices that praised you can quickly turn to disappointment. And yet, that's the paradox of leadership. You cannot control how people see you, but you must live up to the image they hold of you. So yes, the elderly woman's poem might not make the front page of the newspapers, but in its small way, it has opened a conversation. It has made us reflect on how starved we are for authentic leadership. It has shown that art still has power in public life. And it has given us all a rare chance to laugh, smile, and even feel a little hopeful about the idea of service and duty in South Africa. Now, before we wrap up, let me leave you with this thought. Sometimes it takes the voice of a grandmother, quivering but firm, to cut through all the noise of politics and corruption and remind us that character still counts. If South Africa is ever to rebuild its trust in institutions, it will not start with new policies or flashy reforms. It will start with people like this woman, holding leaders accountable not just through criticism, but also through recognition of the rare moments when they get it right. So, if you found this story moving, funny, or even thought-provoking, don't forget to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and leave a comment below. What do you think about General Mkhwanazi and the poem? Do we need more of this kind of recognition in our politics, or should we be more cautious with praise? I'd love to hear your views. See you next time.